And let me share my screen. Everybody see the agenda? All right, good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is where you are. Welcome to the Cluster API Azure Provider Weekly Office Hours meeting. We are a project of the SIG Cluster Lifecycle umbrella project, and therefore we abide by their general code of conduct, which you probably are familiar with, but it boils down to let's all be polite to each other, try to use the raise hand feature so we don't talk over each other, etc. Yep, we have this meeting every week, and thanks for being here. If you wouldn't mind adding your name to the attendee list, it just helps people clue in who everyone else is and what they do, and maybe network later. Do we have anyone here who's here for the first time? Wants to just unmute and say hello? I will be quiet for a second to give you an opportunity to do that. If not, all right. Let's move on. First discussion topic, John, do you want to talk about priority in the issue queue?
Yeah. So recently I started looking for a new issue to pick up and found it kind of hard to figure out what was important based on like labels and milestones or anything else that's easy to filter on in the queue. So I'm wondering if others would find it helpful to have some sort of canonical way to express which issues are most important in the immediate term. And does that even make sense given everyone kind of has their own sense of what's important to them? Does anybody have any thoughts?
I do if no one else does. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
I think that in the community spirit, let's bypass the whole how do we figure out which person's version of important is the most important, and just trust that if someone is willing to stick their neck out and say this is important, that it's important, and we can figure out if we need to optimize later on.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Mike.
I pretty much, I mean, I agree with what Jack said, but at the same time, one of the things that I came across with yesterday, I think it was, is I was trying to kind of figure out, what I could help work on to help get the AKS part of it outside of beta without saying, hey, what can I do to help get this outside of, experimental? So some sort of prioritization sort of would be useful. For when there's initiatives would be good. I don't know if necessarily a features overall, but just, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense to me, where like we might not want to like load up a milestone and then prioritize things that way. But yeah, I think kind of having bigger buckets of like, okay, this is the AKS stuff that's important. And yeah, I think initiatives like that does make sense to me. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, I think for Epic style, using a sort of Scrum jargon, for Epic style issues and work streams, it might make sense to just spin off a GitHub project for each of those, and then each of those efforts can sort of self-organize and define how to prioritize, because often that is the sort of that's where I think prioritization can benefit the most, at least in my experience. When you're working week over week or month over month toward a common goal, you get into a really nice sort of working cruising altitude where you're just like, all right, I did this thing, what's next? Okay, let's do that thing. And because there's a common sort of context to what you're working towards, it allows you to kind of be slightly to leave your sort of critical mind behind when you pick an issue, because you're just like, all right, I'm going to trust the PM is going to pick me a good issue. I know this whole surface area well. I'm just going to do this work. So you kind of get into that mode. Whereas for the entire, like for an entire open source project, it can be harder. It just becomes really, I think the inputs for assigning a reasonable priority across issues becomes harder, because the inputs are including things like, okay, where does this issue fit into the sort of meta work streams? If AKS is more important than I don't know what else would be more important in CAPC right now, but then you have to like do sort of multi-dimensional stack ranking, which can be complicated. So that was a lot of language. I think TLDR for me is maybe in the spirit of like experimentation, maybe we could spin off the AKS effort into its own project, and the folks who are especially interested in that can self-govern how to prioritize those issues, and maybe share that regularly with the community. And if there's a model that makes sense, maybe that can be generalized.
I'm going to say something. I updated Zoom just now, and I literally can't find the raise hand feature. I hate this UI. Sorry. So let me interrupt. We also have, I mean, maybe everybody's fully aware of this, but we have, you know, these tags here that are common to most of the PROW projects, priority backlog, etc., that we just haven't been using. These run kind of effectively, and I'm sure you all know, the way we've been prioritizing things is either assigning them to the next milestone or not. And so they effectively, there's just a Boolean kind of priority at this point. But would it be helpful if maintainers started using these more? Is that kind of what you're looking for, John, or is this not the same ranking?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one way to go about that. But yeah, I think I kind of like Jack's idea of, like with the AKS stuff in particular, let's kind of put that stuff in a bucket, and then we can kind of figure out how that stuff should go. And then like if the labels work really well, then yeah, I can see where that's something we could apply more broadly.
You can always add additional labels too, if this isn't fine-grained enough. Go ahead, Jack, sorry.
I like those labels. I think we would probably have to discuss as a community what those mean for CAPC in particular. But one thing I can imagine is, as someone, especially like I think from a contributor point of view, the most common orientation you are in terms of the project is, can I get my PR reviewed? When is it going to land? Like those are really interesting things. And usually contributors don't like to just shout like, when someone help me. So if we could give signaling that suggests like, oh, okay, well, I can actually see at a glance that there's like 3 other super critical things, and there's lots of people working on that. That makes sense that would go before my feature request or something. Alternatively, if that's not there, you could maybe go in the PR thread and advocate like, hey, can we bump this in priority, and then we can assign it. So that, I think it's not something we can introduce like right away, but I do think, I mean, what do you think, Matt, and folks who've been here for a long time? I would imagine one of the reasons why we're not using these sort of standard priority labels that we have access to is maybe the project hasn't been big enough until now where we could just kind of handle this in real time, because there's 3 or 4 folks who are primarily responsible. But now that if we're 12, 16, 20 folks deep who are interested in the project, then the lack of priority labels is sort of more conspicuously absent, you know.
I think that's true. If up until now, it's more or less been the case that if we can't sort of assign the work within the group of reviewers and maintainers and regulars, that we just mark it help wanted, and that's sort of worked okay up until now, but maybe not anymore. I mean, we should still use help wanted, but I see the need for priority labels or something like that.
Yeah, I think in reality, there are times when folks in real time are saying, okay, this is the most important thing I'm going to do. And spending 5 seconds to tag that PR to communicate that to the larger community, I think adds value. I think Mike,
go ahead,
raising your hand.
Yeah, I just, as a recent new contributor, you know, and don't take this as pressure to review my PR, having a general idea of timelines for PR reviews and that kind of thing with those kind of priority tags would be really beneficial, because then I'd would know that there's these other things that are a higher priority for those reviews, and to not ping somebody for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it happens to be, instead of accidentally bugging somebody because there's other higher priority things in the queue. I think that would be useful as well.
Good point. So any other comments? Do we have anything concrete like action item here, or are we just agreeing that we should do something?
So I think concrete action item, I totally am in favor of opening up a new GitHub project for the AKS stuff.
So we would have a GitHub project just to track AKS issues in CapZ. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I think so, yes.
That makes sense. I thought we have used projects kind of intermittently in the past, but we should do that. Ashutosh.
Yeah, makes sense. I just wanted to say maybe we can do a PSA on Slack channel so that folks who couldn't join may chime in with ideas.
Good idea.
If it's a action item, yeah.
Do you want to do that, or I can certainly ask on Slack if
I can tweet it.
Yeah, I think we can figure that out amongst ourselves.
Okay.
So, since John brought up the discussion, I think the default goes to him, so he's going to have to pawn it off on someone else.
you got voluntold.
Sounds good.
Cool. Any more feedback or questions about priority in the issue queue? All right. Next issue, Ashutosh has been here for a long time and done tons of work, and we would like to make him a reviewer. I assume this is a no-op, but just want to make people aware of that. And unless someone has an objection, let's go ahead and merge this. Yeah.
Do it while recording.
Yeah. We'll do it live.
Actually, we might not want to wait for
And
Prime to
at
do it for
LGTM,
us.
your own PR. Fine, we're done. What's that?
Oh, I got you. Oh, I'm on top of that, Matt.
I think we're all good, but it's already got a bunch of LGTMs. So congratulations. Thank you very much, Ashutosh. Welcome to reviewer status.
Thanks,
There's actually-
Matt, and thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was saying
was-
thanks to Matt, Jack, and Cecil, and everybody else who helped me navigate. So thanks a lot. I'm learning quite a bit Azure things. Thank you. Thank you.
There's a
Continuing.
couple other follow-up PRs I'll create now that are super uninteresting, but there's several other Kubernetes projects where you have to update basically the same list. It's super annoying, but I'll CC you on those.
Anyone with outstanding reviews, Ashutosh's DMs are open. So
That's
just saying.
right.
Thanks.
Cool. Next item, just yesterday at the CAPI meeting, they were talking about it's probably not productive to have a regularly scheduled meeting during KubeCon week. Wondering if we should do the same thing the following day. People want to soldier on, or is everybody going to KubeCon or a significant amount, or should we? Looks like thumbs up, thumbs up. Ashutosh?
Yeah, I would be. I'm going to attend KubeCon, so like I don't know. I may not be able to attend like that week. So, like, but if most of people are, more willing to attend, that's also fine.
Yeah, maybe we can say, reach out to Matt or Cecile or myself if you want to host this meeting without us, and we can work out a way to get you maybe the credentials to do that, but otherwise by default, we'll cancel.
Okay.
I think it's actually probably in the spirit of KubeCon to force folks to focus on KubeCon, even if you're not attending. So go watch the videos instead of coming to these meetings.
I agree. I'll actually be here, so if we do want to do a meeting, I could host it, but I guess that constitutes canceled by default unless people on Slack disagree, which would be fine. All right, Ashutosh, should we do a patch release for the SSA change? I think probably yes.
Yeah. Like we had a discussion last week on Slack with Cecile, and we were kind of in a split brain situation, like because this particular PR is an API change, but also a bug fix, right? So, we wanted to like hear from everyone else, like what do they think about this? As far as I'm concerned, I may be biased because there are a lot of things that are kind of blocked downstream because of this. Like we are trying to validate a lot of things around cluster class. So a couple of pipelines are read. And yeah, I mean, I'll stay out of it in terms of like what would be the best practice. So let's decide and come to a consensus.
I mean, it seems like up until now, our threshold for should we do a patch release is, someone wants a bug fix badly. So I think we've met the threshold. But go ahead, Jack.
I think it's actually kind of controversial. Can you state the case for this not being breaking, Ashutosh? And in the meantime, when is 1.6 due? Do we have another month? Is it November 7th-ish? So for your environment, Ashutosh, that additional 3 weeks or so would be a big ask, sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to like figure out other ways because 3 weeks would be a long time. But to your question, Jack, it's a breaking change because one of the fields were removed into Azure cluster object. So, but like if you see the practical situation, like I'm not sure like how many users are actually using Azure cluster template via cluster class. So these were kind of discussions that we were having. But yeah, it's a breaking change as far as
it gets into that category of like strictly speaking, we are breaking the API or change. I shouldn't say breaking. Yeah. That's like a loaded word. We're changing the API.
Yeah,
but we are doing it in a way that is not user impacting because it's embedded structs, that kind of thing. Has the PR merged to main?
Yes, the PR has got a merged.
Okay, great. Well, once again, thank you so much for that. That's just awesome that you did that work. So I would advocate let's have a quick breakout today, maybe in the next couple hours with folks in. Cecile's not here. I'd love to get her input on the patch issue. I tend to myself, if there's a practical reason to do it, that would outweigh like a sort of strict. If it strictly violates the letter of the law, I think that's okay if we can find a practical justification.
Yeah, we can fall back to the Slack thread, and maybe if anyone has any objection, we can call that out there. So Cecile has also,
does anyone else have any objections here or in favor of here? Anyone have any context?
I mean, as long as it's not in practice going to break users, and it sounds like we talked about it and it wasn't going to, it doesn't bother me that it's technically breaking change. And it's something we intended to have fixed for the 1.5 release in the first place, so it'd be good to get it out there, right?
I mean, if you see in another way, it's already breaking. So it's already broke. So.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, could we spend a few minutes looking into it? Matt, would you mind screen sharing and giving folks a chance to? Because I'm not sure very many folks on this have actually looked at the issue.
Do you want to look at the PR, or it's kind of hard to?
Yeah, let's look at the change set, and I can.
Whoa.
Ashtosh can maybe narrate with.
Yeah,
I can find the PR. If my browser's going to respond. I just didn't want to. I started to share Slack itself, and that was kind of a mess.
So I think it's that
There it
fourth
is.
one down.
Yeah.
So could you look in the diff, pretty please? And I'll point out what I'm referring to as being strictly breaking. So if we scroll down a little bit to the type definitions, and this is all documented in this PR and another PR that this is actually the direction we all agreed to go in. So that right there, you might argue that additive change right there is enough to sort of, if you're doing the letter of the law, you wouldn't want to patch that in, but that's actually not what I'm talking about. And you could definitely make the argument that practically speaking, that's a safe addition.
Mike, you had your
But
hand
if you
up.
scroll down a little. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, this is the one where it changed name, right? From moved around where name is set, or was that a non-impacting change and it just affected the spec inside the code?
No, you're right. It is the name.
And
So
So if you scroll down further, you can see how it's. All right,
but that
cool.
ends
So
up
there's
not
a few
having
things you have
an
to
impact,
tie
right?
together. Ashutosh, you can probably explain this the best.
Yeah. So basically what we did is we pulled out the name field that was there in the subnet spec and moved it to subnet class spec. So technically for end user, it doesn't make any difference. But, in terms of code structure, when we code it around, it makes difference. And we have two objects here. One is Azure cluster template and one is Azure cluster. So when we use cluster class, Azure cluster object can be created by using this Azure cluster template. So what happens is a new field gets added to Azure cluster template, and a field from Azure cluster structure is removed, but technically it's present because then what got added is already embedded in Azure cluster. So does that make sense, or it's like?
Yeah, that last part is the key. So the reason why moving that name out from underneath the subnet spec and then adding it into the subnet class spec is because subnet class, I'm going to make sure I say this right. Subnet class spec is an embedded property in another struct. And so once things are constructed together for the user-facing API, there's no change. Does that make sense to folks?
Yeah.
So only if
So
someone is
really
actually using the Go code directly, vendoring it or something like that, are they going to break?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's the sort of strict letter of the law. But the reason I wanted, thank you for demonstrating this, Matt, and talking through it, Ashutosh. I just wanted to give any other folks who are here who haven't maybe looked at this an opportunity, because this is kind of a standard pattern in Go to voice any concerns, opinions, thoughts.
Yeah, and if this helps, I want to speak one line about the motivation why we did this is we want to, so the subnet plus spec that you see at line 74 and types_class.go is actually used in Azure cluster template APIs. And we want to have a sort of primary key kind of field so that we are able to uniquely identify the slice. And this is required for API server, to do a server-side apply. So TLDR is, we want to kind of uniquely identify this. Not we, like we said, we want to help it. We want to help Kube API server to uniquely identify it. And that's where you see there is a tag if you scroll up, Matt.
On here, I thought it was in types.
Yeah, I'm having a lag, but yeah, if you can just
Under
it's
subnets or under
in the subnets. Yeah, here we go, line 138.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the change, and I have linked an issue to this. Like, if this is not there, what would be the impact? That's the motivation part, and yeah, Jack explained like the breaking change part. So feel free to ask if you have any questions.
Zane, you have a question?
Yeah, I think like, sorry, I have not been much active lately, but like just wanted to ask about like these from the retro compatibility like perspective. If someone is using that and they do the upgrade, if this is broken, and if we can like use this opportunity to provide a path to move forward where we can do like changes on API, but without doing any breaking changes, like keeping it. I know there's no new API type, so we cannot use the conversion webhook for that, but still, can we just keep it the old spec till the new version is released and the new API types comes in, and then we like just deprecate that?
So maybe I didn't get the entire part, but like, is somebody using cluster class? Like, if anyone is using cluster class, it's already broken, and if someone is not using a cluster class, then it should be all fine. Correct me, Jack. Like, that's what I understand.
That's
Yeah.
right. It's
So-
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's why we haven't seen this, except for your scenario, Ashutosh. Maybe some other folks. Cluster class adoption isn't like 100% at this point, and our end-to-end tests don't cover this particular scenario. I'm delighted that you have test scenarios. I'll at some point maybe bug you and see if we can get those. You're saying your pipeline is red now. I'd love to get our pipeline red too, so to speak.
So Zane, are you asking if we could defer this to a minor release or
No.
something, or just
I was just asking if we can use this opportunity, but like if we are already giving this a lower like standard, like it's experimental or not like available for anyone, then of course I think it's okay to break the IP. Yeah, it should be fine.
Also, Jan, for what is what, like, this particular thing is already broken. So, like, if somebody is using this feature of
100%.
cluster class, it's already broken. So, like, just to mention that.
Yeah, 100%. To be super clear, what I want folks to weigh in on is the changes to the API here. This is definitely fair to classify as a bug fix, but I want to see if it's a bug fix that is maybe the way that we had to fix this bug is to change the API, which we literally did. So in some scenarios, that's the kind of thing that you wouldn't actually be able to include with a patch release. So that's what I want folks to weigh in on.
Yep. Yeah.
cool. Any other comments on this one? Are we going to still poll people in Slack and just make sure no one objects? Or
Yeah, what I'll probably do myself is, if someone else doesn't do it before me, is just loop the folks who've weighed in here today and Cecile in like the next half hour or so, and just give folks any last chance to express concern before I tag them for cherry picks.
Thanks, Jack.
makes sense to me. Cool. All right. Well, if there's nothing else about that, Mike, you want to talk about importing a cluster?
That's just a PSA from yesterday's CAPI meeting.
Oh, right.
There's been a lot of interest beyond just the stuff I brought up for importing clusters for managed control planes. And so we're starting some conversations about that. And just if people are interested in participating, there's a Slack thread where we're starting to talk about trying to schedule a meeting to discuss it in more detail. That's all.
Nice. Any questions?
If we ever solve this, I'll miss the every 7 days someone popping into Cappy Slack and asking if you can adopt a cluster. Having to give
And
the
then you
same
get to say
answer
no
every time.
Just makes you feel needed, right? It'd be sad when they stop asking.
Yeah,
No.
the focus will be on managed clusters, not the non-managed clusters, but the AKS, EKS, that kind of thing. But we'll still be saying no for the other type, but still, it's a start.
All right. Let's move on to the next item. Akinlolo, tell me if I'm getting your name wrong. Sorry. You were talking about managed cluster and cluster class last time.
Yeah, so for some background, my team is planning some work around cluster API. We've done some work already, and we're looking to use cluster class and AKS specifically for lifecycle hooks. So that the issue is there for that I created is to add that support and just want to follow up on just at least understanding level of effort, anything our team can do to help, or anything along those lines, either for support or even development. So we're all new to cluster API and development, so we're not sure really, is this like one line of code or months worth of work type deal.
Hmm. I'm just reading Cecile's description. I mean, it looks like it's going to be more than a day or two of work, certainly. I mean, it sounds like not a trivial thing, moving stuff around. Jack, do you have an opinion on this? Cecile asked a question at the end.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button and
Oh, that's all
full
right.
screen went somewhere. No, I don't have an opinion right off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly we're here to help. If you and your team are able to get going on it. It doesn't look trivial, but it looks like Cecile kind of has her head around it, so I'm sure that means it's a finite amount of work. I don't know. Anyone have opinions on how much work this would be, or any guidance?
I think a decent amount of work, but I think it'll look nicely in that new project board we set up.
It's important work. I mean, the fact that no one's pounced on it simply means that we're all pretty busy with other stuff as well, I think, rather than that this isn't a desirable thing to do.
Makes sense. But is there any, I guess what would be, next steps from here? Is it, at some point someone will pick it up and start to break it down, or just really just trying to understand, at least from my team's end, planning, is it something trying to, like, as we're creating our schedules now moving forward, we just want to make sure we don't accidentally put something on our plate that's a blocker and we're waiting for a while. And if there are things that we can do in the meantime to help push this forward as well, we're also open to that as well.
I mean, it looks like some of these things are potentially separable, like the second paragraph where we should see if we about moving some fields, although that's a breaking change, so that's potentially problematic. But it does look like this could be broken down into maybe more than one task.
So it does, there's a non-zero chance that this would take a long time and would block you. So I think we should just be pulling in the right folks. So as an example, that in addition part that Cecile mentioned, that would result in breaking changes to the Azure Managed Cluster API, like full stop. So we may want to do that, but we're going to want to, we've got folks on this call right now who are going to have opinions about that. So, you know, Zane, are you going to want to change all of your Azure Managed Cluster specs in order to get that long-term benefit of adhering to the CAPI standard? You know, same question to you, Mike, and other folks. You'll have to, that'll be a breaking change for every existing Azure Managed Cluster customer. That might be part of the contract. You know, we all are aware that it's experimental, but I think we just want to have a conversation about that. If we have, you know, significant pushback on that part, then this may be harder to do. The cluster class, so I'm gonna wave my hands a little bit, but the affinity between the Azure Managed Cluster spec and the original CAPI specs is already kind of it's not quite like square peg round hole, but something like that. And I think that with cluster class, it gets even more sort of difficult. And so if we don't do that middle step, then the affinity between Azure Managed Cluster and cluster class becomes really sort of difficult to reconcile. And so doing this work would be really hacky. So I'm not going into a lot of detail right now, but I think that this is a decent amount of work.
And also, since it involves a breaking change, potentially that's a place that you get stuck for a while if there's a lot of, if that's difficult or if there's a lot of objections. So what's the best way for you to approach this still? Yeah, Ashutosh.
Yes, like plus one to what Jack said, just because I've been around cluster class a while, I'd say, like what Cecile said, maybe if the interested groups can actually put an evaluation on what, you know, what breaks and what is the impact and all, just to, you know, for example, to take a look at it. You know, like for example, I don't understand what may be the impact, and if that is outlined, like, okay, if we want to do cluster class, you know, this is the impact, and do we really want to do that for managed clusters? I mean, that can help a lot of other folks to actually decide on. And then maybe not into this minor release, but, you know, going forward, we can think about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So since it looks like the sticky widget here might be this potentially breaking change, maybe a good strategy for you, Akinlola, would be to follow up on her comment and try and figure out concretely what fields would actually have to move, and then present that back, you know, maybe just in this PR or on Slack and say, hey, here's what we're actually talking about. How painful is that going to be for everyone? That might be a good way to see. And if it seems like it's something we can work around, then full steam ahead. If it seems like it's going to be a problem, then obviously that's something we have to work at. Does that seem like a reasonable way to approach it?
Yep, sounds good to me. And just another quick question. So reading the proposal, for the non-cluster class and managed clusters, it mentioned that the current implementation in CAPC uses like the option 2 from that proposal, and seems to me like from the question here is, would CAPZ keep the current implementation or move to the new proposal? And it seems like there's still some questions to answer there. Would that also be part of what will need to be decided as well? Or is there any consensus already on which proposal the CAPC team is going to take?
There's no consensus. I would say the proper way to classify this is that work on a cluster class integration is blocked on that decision. So if the decision is no, we're not going to change the current spec and we're going to stay as, you know, this option 2 down here, which deviates from the official sort of recommendation, then we could probably begin work on the cluster class integration immediately. But if we decide to go with option 1, then that work would be blocked on that. Otherwise, we have to do that work sort of twice, if that makes sense. It makes the effort harder because now we have to rip apart cluster class stuff as well. So
Okay.
we would do this work first, and the consensus is TBD. That is the conversation I was suggesting would involve some folks on this call and other folks, you know, Zane, Ashtosh, Mike, other users to weigh in on the sort of cost benefit of that for them, because the cost is you're gonna have to update all your specs.
Okay, it makes sense. So I'll see if I can help push forward the getting the information about the fields and things that will need to change, and then get that documented in this issue. Thank you all.
Cool. Thanks for working on this. Hopefully it's not too steep of a hill to climb. All right, that's the end of the agenda. Do we want to do milestone review? Let's do it. Got a few more weeks, more than halfway there. Let's see. This Noaz is going to work on this. So it's assigned at least. Willie, I know you put this in and you're, I don't know if we want to weigh in on each one, but just
yeah, I think I think Jonathan was also working on something similar with the same problem. But like this problem might be a little bit hard to solve because of the design of like how the manager policy files are generated every time something's run. So it might take a little bit to look into that.
but we're still on it, so I'll leave it on the milestone, I guess.
Yep.
Add new test specs. It's been assigned, although I haven't seen any progress, but hopefully it's going somewhere. This I think is still happening, right, Jack? You have the, do we merge the PR for this or no?
We did merge one PR. So I made one change, and John has also done a lot of discovery work here. So, yeah, I feel like we'll be in a good place. It's possible based on that discovery work that we have to do less on the CAPSI side than we originally thought, but that still amounts to the same. We will have a better idea by the end of this milestone about how we're responding to HTTP 429.
Cool. And that's essentially the same. Well, this is rate limiting, but it's also just part of the same fix area.
Why are there two? Can you scroll to the top?
Yeah.
Let's close this. This I think we just determined was out of scope. Or not needed basically, because we have rate limiting already in the SDK, and we also have a sane CAPI idiomatic way to control the rate of like reconciliation. So yeah.
All right. Oops. Hey. This is waiting on me and others to review. Sorry, Mike, I'm really trying to get to it.
Quite all right.
It's a big one. Node public IP prefix ID. Is this still in progress, Sean?
This one is ready for review, so I'm done with that until I get some feedback on that PR.
Excellent.
I think a lot of cockroaches were uncovered when you ripped out the kitchen sink there. Which is good. We killed some cockroaches.
Yeah, we don't want cockroaches. And this is covered by your PR, I assume, Mike? Just a different.
So what? Sorry, I turned away for a moment. What was?
Oh, sorry. This
statement?
is the. It's all in. This is the PR. Sorry. This is the PR that references the issue above. They're both in the milestone, I guess. I didn't realize we were looking at both. Secure sensitive bootstrap data. So here's one where we actually used a priority label, which seems helpful.
Yeah, that one, we know what we want to do, just that I've not yet gotten a chance to raise a design document. So there was a PR that was worked upon sometime back by Shyam, and it is like a little complex because it involves a couple of cloud in its script and hacks. So Cecil has asked to raise the design document. So I'll try to find some time and actually raise it. I have some draft written with me. Probably once we get that reviewed, I'll just have to take the old PR of Siam and rework on that. Maybe possibly rebase some of the changes, and then we can navigate that. We'll try to see if we can make this release, given that KubeCon is there, and I have to prepare my talk also. So I'll try to see if I can raise the design document in coming days.
Okay. I mean, if not, it just slips to the next milestone. That's fine.
Yeah.
That way,
Yeah.
but as long as there's a fighting chance, I guess we generally leave it on the milestone. And this is also related.
Yeah, this is that issue for the PR that you just showed
Okay.
a minute ago.
So we've
Yeah.
basically covered it. And then, oh. Is this also something that might land, Ashutosh, or should we? Sorry, it's the APD workload.
Yeah, so I think I need to start a thread and have a couple of questions on this one with the workload identity folks. I see that we don't have a Go SDK mentioned there in their document. So I need a couple of more details, and it's fuzzy right now in my brain. So I'll possibly do a write-up and paste this here in the issue and on the Slack so that, I have some questions that can help me to actually get started on this one. And I know there was one contributor lurking around in Slack channel, and, feel free to, chime in and help if you think, you can. So, but yeah, these two items are on my bucket list and I am on it. So.
Okay. Awesome. That's everything we have on the milestone. If anybody can think of anything that really should go on there, I don't want to grovel through all the issues, but feel free to assign it to the milestone yourself. We can always take it out or let us know and we can put it on the milestone. Oops, there we go. Okay, that's everything we had on the agenda. But does anybody have anything last minute to bring up or ad hoc? Yeah, Ashutosh.
Yeah, I just want to share a funny story that happened last time while I was debugging a CapG release. I just want to share it if it might help people. if you are running behind a proxy, just make sure that your CAPG deployment has a no proxy field that allows this MSI endpoint to be passed through no proxy, because it is some 169.254, 169.254. And I was like doing crazy. I was doing all the debugging. I couldn't figure out what's going wrong. And I had started a thread in CAPG, like, I was trying to figure out what's going wrong. It was giving some 400 state bad request error. And looks like that because that MSI endpoint was being redirected through a proxy, it never got intercepted by the NMI pod. So it all didn't work. Just a PSA. Sorry if it's like too complex, but
Thanks for
I'll
sharing,
just,
and that's also
I think that's good
just
advice.
huge props to you for being able to debug that low level stuff.
I'll also write that so in the thread.
All right, well, unless anybody has anything else, let's call it a day, and we'll see everybody here next week. Thanks for coming.
See
Take
ya.
care,
Thanks,
everyone.
Matt. Take care.
Thanks, Matt.